Years passed, and the partnership between humans and the Vortha became a cornerstone of life on Earth. The lessons learned from their first encounter shaped humanity's future in ways no one could have imagined. Jack returned from his trip to the Vortha's homeworld with stories that captivated everyone who heard them. He described towering cities made of glowing crystal, forests where plants sang softly in harmony, and meals that weren't just eaten but experienced, tasting like memories and emotions all at once. "They taught me things I never thought possible," Jack said during an interview after his return. "Their cooking isn't just about flavor. It's about telling stories, sharing feelings. And they wanted to learn how we do it too. How we turn simple ingredients into something meaningful." Inspired by what he'd seen, Jack began teaching others how to blend human traditions with alien techniques, creating dishes that connected people across worlds. Linda, meanwhile, published a follow-up book titled Beyond the Stars, humanity's new chapter. It chronicled the ongoing collaboration with the Vortha, highlighting moments of triumph and challenges overcome. Her writing reminded readers that while progress wasn't always easy, it was worth the effort. "We're learning to see ourselves differently," she wrote. "Not as separate beings, but as part of something larger. A universe full of possibilities." The influence of the Vortha stretched far beyond technology and cuisine. Their philosophy of adaptation and connection inspired changes in how humans approached problems. Cities redesigned themselves to be more sustainable, using alien-inspired methods to reduce waste and conserve resources. Schools emphasized creativity and teamwork, encouraging students to think outside the box. Even conflicts between nations began to ease as leaders focused on cooperation rather than competition. One of the most visible symbols of this new era was the annual intergalactic feast, held simultaneously on Earth and aboard the Vortha's ship. People gathered to share meals made from both human and alien recipes, celebrating the bond they had formed. At one such event, Linda stood beside Jack as they watched children laugh and play, their faces glowing under the light of floating alien lanterns. "Do you remember when we first met them?" she asked quietly. Jack smiled, nodding. Hard to believe it started with a bowl of purple stew. But the legacy went deeper than festivals or food. Humanity had changed, not overnight, but gradually, through countless small acts of courage and curiosity. Scientists worked alongside the Vortha to explore distant planets, discovering wonders that expanded their understanding of the universe. Artists collaborated to create pieces that blended human emotion with alien precision, producing works that moved audiences to tears. And ordinary people found inspiration in the idea that even in the face of uncertainty, kindness and open-mindedness could lead to extraordinary outcomes. As time went on, Earth became a beacon of hope for other species exploring the stars. Ships from unknown civilizations began appearing in the skies, drawn by tales of humanity's alliance with the Vortha. Each new arrival brought fresh opportunities and challenges, but humans faced them with confidence, knowing they had already built bridges where none had existed before. Jack often reflected on how much had changed since that fateful dinner. What started as a tense moment had grown into a movement that reshaped the world. His cookbook, now translated into dozens of languages, sat on shelves across the globe, its pages worn from use. Linda's books were studied in schools, her words inspiring new generations to dream big and embrace the unknown. One evening, as Jack and Linda sat together watching the sunset, a familiar hum filled the air. The Vortha's ship descended gently, its surface shimmering like liquid gold. They exchanged a glance, smiling knowingly. Whatever came next, they were ready. Humanity had proven it could adapt, connect, and thrive, even among the stars. And so, the story continued, not as a tale of fear or conquest, but as one of connection and growth. Through curiosity, creativity, and a shared love of good food, humans and aliens alike discovered that the universe was vast, yes, but not lonely. Together, they were writing a new chapter, one bite at a time. Months after the first encounter, Humanity began to see real changes thanks to the partnership with the Vortha. Technologies once thought impossible were now being developed, inspired by the aliens' advanced knowledge. Clean energy systems based on alien designs started replacing outdated methods, reducing pollution, and helping heal Earth's environment. Medical breakthroughs followed, too. Treatments for diseases that had plagued humans for centuries became more effective, saving countless lives. Jack and Linda played key roles in this transformation. Jack's fusion dishes gained worldwide popularity, not just because they were delicious, but because they symbolized unity. His cookbook, titled Galactic HFY, became a bestseller, filled with recipes that combined human and alien flavors. Each dish came with a story about how it was created, often highlighting moments of collaboration between humans and the Vortha. People loved reading about the glowing blue dessert or the shimmering purple stew, imagining themselves as part of something bigger. Linda's memoir, First Contact, A Meal Shared told the full story of their time aboard the alien ship. She wrote about the fear and uncertainty they felt, the tension during the dinner, and how a simple question from Jack changed everything. Her words reminded readers that curiosity and kindness could overcome even the greatest challenges. The book sparked debates in schools, workplaces, and homes, inspiring people to think differently about strangers and outsiders. The Vortha noticed the impact of these efforts. They continued visiting Earth regularly, bringing new ideas and sharing more aspects of their culture. In return, humans invited them to experience life on the planet. Music festivals, sporting events, family gatherings. At one outdoor concert, a group of musicians performed a piece inspired by the hum of the Vortha's ship, blending alien tones with human melodies. When the Vortha leader heard it, its glowing eyes softened, and it made a sound like soft chimes, a sign of appreciation. Governments worked together to create policies ensuring peaceful cooperation with the Vortha. International teams monitored all interactions, making sure both sides respected boundaries while fostering trust. It wasn't always smooth. There were disagreements and misunderstandings, but the commitment to learning from each other never wavered. One day, Jack received an invitation he hadn't expected. The Vortha asked him to visit their home world, not as a guest, but as a teacher. "Your creativity has inspired us." The message read, "We wish to learn your ways of cooking and sharing meals." Jack stared at the note for a long time, stunned. He turned to Linda, who grinned when she heard the news. "Looks like you're going interstellar," she teased. "Don't forget to pack your apron." Before leaving, Jack gave a speech to a packed auditorium. "When I met the Vortha, I didn't know what to expect," he said, his voice warm and steady. "But I learned something important, that food isn't just about eating. It's about connection, about sitting down with someone, sharing a meal, and realizing you're not so different after all." The crowd erupted into applause, cheering not just for Jack, but for the hope he represented. Linda stayed behind to continue documenting humanity's journey with the Vortha. She traveled to communities around the globe, collecting stories of how the partnership had changed lives. Farmers used alien farming techniques to grow crops in harsh climates. Teachers incorporated lessons about interspecies communication into their classrooms, and artists created works celebrating diversity. Everywhere she went, Linda saw evidence of progress. Not perfection, but steps in the right direction. As ships traveled back and forth between Earth and the Vortha's planet, carrying scientists, chefs, and diplomats, humanity began to dream bigger. Space exploration programs expanded, aiming to reach farther into the universe. Schools taught children about the importance of curiosity and courage, using Jack and Linda's story as an example. People no longer feared the stars. They looked up at night and wondered what else might be out there. Through it all, the bond between humans and the Vortha grew stronger. What had started as a tense dinner party had blossomed into a partnership built on trust, creativity, and shared goals. And though challenges still lay ahead, both species knew they were ready to face them together. As the weeks passed, Jack and Linda found themselves busier than ever. The world was hungry, not just for food, but for answers. People wanted to know more about the Vortha, their culture, and what their arrival meant for humanity's future. Jack spent most of his days in a lab-turned kitchen, working alongside scientists and chefs to adapt alien recipes for human use. It wasn't easy. Many of the ingredients were unlike anything on Earth, but he approached the challenge with his usual enthusiasm. "This one's tricky," Jack said one afternoon, holding up a vial of silvery liquid that shimmered faintly under the light. "It reacts to temperature changes, so if we don't handle it carefully, it'll lose its flavor." A team of researchers nodded, jotting down notes as they watched him experiment. Together, they had already created several dishes inspired by the Vortha's cooking, blending alien techniques with familiar flavors. One dish, a glowing blue dessert that tasted like a mix between honey and lavender, became an instant hit when it was featured at a global food festival. Linda, meanwhile, traveled across the country, giving talks and writing articles about her experiences aboard the alien ship. She described the strange beauty of the Vortha's kitchen, the way their food seemed almost alive, and how a simple question from Jack had turned a tense situation into an opportunity for connection. Her stories captured people's imaginations, sparking conversations about trust, curiosity, and the importance of finding common ground. The Vortha noticed the impact Jack and Linda were having. They sent messages through their translation devices, expressing gratitude for the humans' efforts to bridge the gap between their species. "Your willingness to learn has impressed us," one message read. "We wish to continue sharing our knowledge." Encouraged by this response, governments around the world began organizing joint projects with the aliens. Scientists worked side by side with the Vortha to study their advanced technologies, while artists collaborated on creating new forms of expression that combined human creativity with alien innovation. Schools even started teaching lessons about interspecies diplomacy, using the encounter as a case study in problem-solving and empathy. Jack and Linda were invited to participate in these initiatives, serving as ambassadors of sorts. They visited classrooms, laboratories, and community centers, sharing their story and encouraging others to embrace curiosity. "You don't have to be afraid of the unknown," Linda told a group of students during one visit. "Sometimes all it takes is asking a question or offering a smile to change someone's perspective." For Jack, the highlight came when he hosted a live cooking demonstration on international television. With cameras rolling, he prepared a fusion dish inspired by the Vortha's purple stew, using Earth-based substitutes for the alien ingredients. As he explained each step, viewers watched in awe, captivated by the idea that something so foreign could become so familiar. By the end of the show, calls poured in from home cooks eager to try the recipe themselves. The collaboration extended beyond food and technology. The Vortha shared insights into their history, revealing stories of survival and adaptation that resonated deeply with humanity. In return, humans introduced the aliens to music, literature, and art, showing them the beauty of creative expression. These exchanges fostered mutual respect, proving that even two vastly different species could find ways to connect. One evening, as Jack and Linda sat together reflecting on everything that had happened, Linda smiled softly. "Do you think we're ready for this?" she asked. "I mean, working with aliens isn't exactly something anyone could have predicted." Jack chuckled, leaning back in his chair. "Probably not. But maybe that's the point. We didn't know what to expect, so we made it up as we went along. And look where it got us." He gestured toward the window, where the glow of the Vortha's ship could still be seen hovering gently in the distance. "They trusted us enough to keep coming back, and we trusted them enough to keep learning. That's something, right?" Linda nodded, feeling a quiet sense of pride. Humanity wasn't perfect, and neither were the Vortha. But together, they were taking steps toward understanding. A small but meaningful beginning. Back on Earth, news of the alien encounter spread like wildfire. People were divided. Some saw it as a terrifying close call, while others viewed it as a hopeful step toward peace. The images of the Vortha's shimmering ship and the strange dishes they had served became the talk of every news channel, social media platform, and dinner table. But no one could agree on what it all meant. Was humanity in danger? Or was this the beginning of something extraordinary? Jack and Linda found themselves at the center of the storm. When the delegation returned home, reporters swarmed them, shoving microphones in their faces and shouting questions. What did the aliens want? Were you poisoned? Is an invasion coming? Jack raised his hands, trying to calm the chaos. Hold on, he said with a chuckle. It wasn't like that. They weren't trying to hurt us. They were trying to learn about us. Linda stepped forward, her voice steady despite the frenzy around them. The Vortha made mistakes, sure, but so did we when we first started exploring space. What matters is that we're talking now. And trust me, there's a lot more to their culture than meets the eye. Their words didn't satisfy everyone, but they sparked curiosity. Governments around the world began holding emergency meetings, debating how to handle the situation. Scientists demanded access to the alien technology, while military leaders pushed for caution. Amid the chaos, Jack and Linda were invited to speak at a global summit, where representatives from nearly every country gathered to discuss humanity's next move. At the summit, Jack stood nervously in front of a massive audience. He wasn't used to being in the spotlight, but he knew this was important. Look, he began, gripping the edges of the podium. I'm just a chef. I don't know much about politics or science, but I do know food. And let me tell you, the Vortha really know how to cook. The crowd laughed, easing some of the tension. Jack smiled before continuing. But here's the thing. They didn't poison us because they wanted to harm us. They did it because they were scared. Scared of rejection. Scared of failure. Doesn't that sound familiar? He paused, letting his words sink in. Food brought us together. It gave us a chance to understand each other, to see past our differences. If we focus on what connects us instead of what divides us, maybe we can build something real with them. Linda followed him, speaking with quiet confidence. The Vortha admitted their mistake, and they offered something in return. They shared their knowledge. They taught us how to make their dishes, not just to eat them, but to appreciate what they mean. That's a start. A small one, yes, but it's still progress. Her speech resonated deeply, especially when she showed pictures of the alien kitchen and the dishes Jack had helped recreate. People began to see the encounter not as a threat, but as an opportunity. Inspired by Jack and Linda's example, world leaders agreed to take a new approach. Instead of preparing for conflict, they decided to focus on collaboration. Over the next few weeks, teams of scientists, chefs, and diplomats worked together to study the Vortha's techniques and adapt them for Earth. Jack became a key figure in the effort, teaching others how to combine human and alien flavors into fusion dishes that captivated imaginations. One recipe, a glowing green soup infused with hints of mint and citrus, became particularly popular, symbolizing the blending of two worlds. Meanwhile, Linda wrote articles and gave interviews, sharing stories of hope and connection. She emphasized the importance of curiosity and open-mindedness, urging people to embrace the unknown rather than fear it. Her work inspired countless discussions about humanity's place in the universe. As the weeks turned into months, the relationship between humans and the Vortha grew stronger. The aliens, impressed by humanity's willingness to adapt, offered to share more than just culinary secrets. They revealed advanced technologies that could revolutionize energy production, medicine, and transportation. In return, humans shared their own achievements, from art and music to scientific discoveries. Through it all, Jack and Linda remained at the heart of the movement, proving that sometimes the simplest things, like sharing a meal, can lead to the most profound changes. And as they looked toward the future, they couldn't help but feel optimistic. For the first time in history, humanity wasn't alone. The Vortha led the humans to a new chamber, one that looked more like a kitchen than anything else. It was filled with strange tools and equipment, devices that hummed softly, surfaces that glowed faintly, and containers holding ingredients Jack couldn't even begin to identify. Some of the items floated mid-air, suspended by unseen forces, while others pulsed gently, as if alive. The room smelled rich and complex, a mix of scents that reminded Jack of spices, flowers, and something metallic he couldn't quite place. "This is where we prepare our meals," the Vortha leader explained, gesturing toward the glowing workstations. "Here you will learn how we create dishes like the purple stew." Jack's eyes lit up with excitement. He had always loved experimenting in the kitchen, but this was on an entirely different level. "All right," he said, rolling up his sleeves. "Let's get started." Linda hung back, her notebook in hand, observing everything carefully. She wasn't much of a cook herself, but she knew this moment was important. The Vortha weren't just teaching them how to make alien food. They were opening a door to understanding their culture. Every ingredient, every technique, told a story, and Linda was determined to capture it all. One of the Vortha approached Jack, holding a small vial filled with a shimmering liquid. "This is the base for the stew," it explained. "It reacts to heat and pressure, creating layers of flavor." Jack took the vial cautiously, turning it over in his hands. "What's it made from?" he asked. The alien hesitated before answering. "Elements unique to our planet, but we can approximate its effects using Earth-based substitutes." Jack nodded thoughtfully. "Got it. So we're talking about chemistry here, right? Like molecular gastronomy." The Vortha tilted its head, clearly unfamiliar with the term. "If you mean altering substances to enhance taste, then yes." As they worked together, Jack began to see patterns. The Vortha used precise measurements and techniques, almost like scientists. They explained how certain compounds interacted with human biology, not just to weaken defenses, as they had done earlier, but also to evoke emotions or memories. "Food is more than nourishment," the alien leader added. "It connects us to our past, to each other." Linda scribbled furiously in her notebook, capturing every detail. She noticed how Jack's enthusiasm seemed to put the aliens at ease. They moved more freely now, explaining concepts with patience and care. Even the diplomats who had been wary earlier began to relax, watching curiously as Jack experimented with the alien ingredients. At one point, Jack accidentally spilled a tiny amount of the shimmering liquid onto the counter. To everyone's surprise, it didn't stay still. It spread out, forming intricate patterns before evaporating into thin air. "Whoa," Jack muttered, staring at the spot where it had been. "That's not something you see every day." The Vortha chuckled softly, a sound like wind chimes tinkling. "It is sensitive to energy," it explained. "Even small disturbances affect its form." Linda stepped forward, pointing at the now empty space. "So these ingredients are alive, in a way." The alien nodded. "They respond to stimuli, yes, much like your plants react to sunlight." By the end of the session, Jack had managed to create a simplified version of the purple stew using Earth-based substitutes. When he offered a spoonful to the Vortha leader, it hesitated before tasting it. For a moment, there was silence. Then the alien smiled, a subtle curve of its lips that seemed almost human. "You have adapted well," it said. "This is a step toward mutual understanding." Linda felt a surge of pride as she watched the exchange. This wasn't just about cooking anymore. It was proof that two vastly different species could find common ground. As the group prepared to leave the chamber, Jack turned to the Vortha leader. "Thanks for showing us this," he said sincerely. "I think we've got a lot more to learn from each other." The alien nodded. "Indeed. Perhaps next time, you will teach us something about your world." As they walked back to the main hall, Linda glanced at Jack, who was already brainstorming ideas for fusion dishes. Despite everything they had been through, he still saw possibilities instead of problems. And maybe, she thought, that was exactly what humanity needed to survive and thrive in a universe full of unknowns. The Vortha leader paused, its glowing eyes fixed on Jack as if trying to understand him. Humans were supposed to react with fear or anger. Those were the emotions the aliens had anticipated. Instead, here was this man, smiling faintly, asking for details about the very substance that had been designed to weaken him. It was unexpected, disarming even. Linda watched the exchange with a mix of disbelief and admiration. She had always known Jack to be easygoing, but this level of calm in the face of danger took her by surprise. "You're really going to ask them for the recipe?" she whispered, leaning closer to him. Jack shrugged, his grin widening. "Why not? If they went through all this trouble to cook something this elaborate, it must be worth learning about. Besides," he added, lowering his voice, "it's better than sitting here panicking." The alien leader finally responded, its tone more thoughtful now. "This dish contains compounds that interact with your nervous system. They slow your body's functions temporarily, making you more open to influence." It gestured toward the shimmering purple stew. "It is precise, calculated, harmless in small doses, but enough to give us insight into your species." Jack nodded slowly, absorbing the explanation. "So it's like anesthesia, something to knock us out without hurting us." The alien tilted its head again, clearly intrigued by his analogy. "In a way, yes, though it serves a greater purpose." Linda couldn't stay quiet any longer. "What purpose?" she asked sharply, her reporter instincts kicking in. "You said you wanted to study us. Why? And why go to such lengths when you could have just talked to us?" The alien hesitated before answering, as if weighing how much to reveal. "We feared rejection," it admitted. "Your history shows aggression, mistrust. We assumed direct communication would fail. This method allowed us to observe you without resistance." The room fell silent again, the weight of the admission sinking in. The humans glanced at each other, unsure how to respond. Some looked angry, others uneasy. But Jack broke the tension once more, leaning forward with genuine interest. "Okay, fair enough," he said. "But if you're so curious about us, why not start with something simpler? Like sharing a meal instead of poisoning it?" The alien blinked, its large eyes glowing brighter for a moment. "Sharing a meal, without deception," it repeated as if testing the idea. Jack nodded enthusiastically. "Exactly. Food brings people together. It's universal. You don't need tricks to make friends." Linda chimed in, sensing an opportunity. "He's right. Humans connect over food all the time. Weddings, holidays, family dinners. It's how we bond. If you want to learn about us, teach us how to cook your dishes. Show us what they mean to you." The Vortha exchanged glances, their expressions unreadable. For beings so advanced, they seemed almost uncertain. Finally, the leader spoke. "We did not anticipate this reaction," it admitted. "You are not behaving as we expected." "Well, maybe that's a good thing," Linda said, her tone softening. "Humans aren't just one thing. We're complicated. Sometimes we fight, sure, but we also adapt. We learn. Maybe it's time you learned something about us too." Jack leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms. "And hey, while we're at it, you can tell us how you made this stew taste so weird yet kind of amazing. I'm serious. I've never had anything like it." The alien leader studied Jack for a long moment, then turned to Linda. There was a flicker of something in its gaze. Curiosity, perhaps, or even respect. "Very well," it said finally. "If you wish to learn, we will teach you. But know this, trust must be earned from both sides." "Fair enough," Jack replied with a wink. "Now, where do we start?" As the tension eased, Linda felt a strange sense of hope. This wasn't how anyone had imagined first contact would go, but maybe that was the point. By focusing on something as simple as food, they had found common ground. And as the Vortha began explaining the ingredients and techniques behind their mysterious dishes, Jack listened intently, already imagining ways to recreate them using Earth-based flavors. For the first time since stepping aboard the alien ship, Linda allowed herself to believe that humanity might actually pull this off. Jack stared at the shimmering purple stew, its surface rippling faintly as if it were alive. He hesitated for a moment, glancing at Linda, who gave him a small nod. "Well," he said with a grin, trying to mask his nerves, "if it reveals truths, I guess I'd better try it." Picking up a spoon, he scooped a small amount and brought it to his lips. The first taste was strange, sweet at first, then sharp and metallic, like biting into aluminum foil. His eyebrows shot up in surprise, but he swallowed anyway, determined not to show any fear. A few seconds passed, and nothing happened. Jack shrugged, turning to Linda. "Not bad," he said lightly, though his voice carried a hint of uncertainty. But then something changed. A tingling sensation spread through his mouth, moving down his throat and into his chest. It wasn't painful, exactly, but it felt wrong, as though his body didn't know how to process it. He blinked rapidly, feeling dizzy for a brief moment before the sensation faded. Across the table, others were reacting too. One diplomat coughed loudly, clutching their throat, while another pushed their plate away with a look of disgust. Linda watched them closely, her pen hovering over her notebook. She hadn't touched the stew yet, but she could see the unease spreading among the group. Something wasn't right about this dish, or maybe about all of them. The Vortha leader observed silently, its glowing eyes fixed on Jack. "Do you feel it?" it asked, its tone calm but probing. Jack hesitated, unsure how to respond. "Feel what?" he asked, forcing a smile. The alien tilted its head slightly, as if studying him. "The truth," it replied. "It will become clear soon." Linda's stomach tightened. This wasn't just a meal. It was an experiment. She glanced at the other humans, noticing how some of them looked pale, their hands trembling slightly. Whatever was in the food, it was affecting them more than they wanted to admit. "What kind of truth are we talking about here?" she asked, her voice steady despite her racing thoughts. The alien didn't answer immediately, instead gesturing toward the dishes still untouched on the table. Jack leaned back in his chair, rubbing his temples. The metallic aftertaste lingered in his mouth, making it hard to focus. He tried to shake off the feeling, telling himself it was probably just his imagination playing tricks on him. But deep down, he couldn't ignore the growing suspicion that something bigger was going on. "You know," he said slowly, addressing the Vortha leader, "you could have just told us whatever you're trying to say. No need for the mystery menu." The alien regarded him curiously, its expression unreadable. "Words alone are often dismissed," it said. "Actions leave a stronger impression." Its response only added to the confusion. Was this some sort of test? Or worse, was it poison? The thought sent a chill down Jack's spine, but he quickly reminded himself to stay calm. Panicking wouldn't help anyone. Linda decided it was time to take control of the situation. Putting her notebook aside, she leaned forward, meeting the alien's gaze directly. "If you're trying to teach us something, fine," she said firmly. "But you need to explain yourself. Humans don't respond well to surprises, especially when it involves things we don't understand." Her words hung in the air, breaking the tense silence. For a moment, no one spoke. Then the Vortha leader nodded slowly. "Very well," it said. "This meal was designed to weaken your defenses, to make you vulnerable so that we might study you further. We feared your species would reject our attempts at communication outright, given your history of conflict." The room fell silent. Everyone froze, processing the admission. Poison. They had been poisoned, not lethally, but enough to incapacitate them temporarily. Jack felt anger bubbling inside him, but before he could say anything, Linda interrupted. "So let me get this straight," she said, her tone sharp. "You poisoned us because you thought we wouldn't listen otherwise." The alien hesitated, then nodded again. "Yes." Instead of shouting or demanding answers, Jack surprised everyone, including himself, by leaning forward with genuine curiosity. "Okay," he said, pointing at the purple stew. "I'll bite. What's in this thing? How does it work?" His question caught the Vortha off guard, its glowing eyes widening slightly. For the first time since the meal began, the tension in the room shifted. Linda stared at Jack, stunned. "Are you serious right now?" she whispered. But Jack just shrugged. "Hey, if they went through all this trouble to cook for us, the least we can do is learn something, right?" The Vortha exchanged glances, clearly unsure how to react. Perhaps they hadn't expected such a reaction from their human guests. The table was now filled with dishes that seemed to defy the laws of nature. There were plates of food that floated slightly above the surface, glowing faintly as if lit from within. Some items pulsed with soft, rhythmic beats, while others emitted gentle wisps of steam that curled into shapes resembling flowers before vanishing into thin air. The colors were unlike anything Jack or Linda had ever seen. Shades of deep indigo, shimmering gold, and vibrant greens that seemed almost too bright to be real. Jack couldn't help but marvel at the presentation. As a chef, he appreciated the artistry, even if he didn't fully understand what he was looking at. He reached out cautiously, his fingers hovering over a dish that looked like tiny crystalline towers tacked neatly together. When he finally touched one, it felt cool and smooth like glass, but it dissolved instantly under his fingertips, leaving behind a faint scent of citrus and something else he couldn't quite place. "This is incredible," he muttered, mostly to himself. Linda, meanwhile, was watching the Vortha closely. She noticed how they moved with precision, almost like dancers choreographed to an invisible rhythm. Each alien carried trays or adjusted the placement of dishes with deliberate care, their long fingers gliding effortlessly over the food without disturbing its intricate arrangements. It was clear they took immense pride in this meal. But why? What was the purpose behind all this effort? Her reporter's instincts told her there was more to this than just hospitality. The Vortha leader stepped forward again, drawing everyone's attention. "This feast represents our culture," it said, its voice calm but firm. "It tells stories of who we are and where we come from." Linda scribbled furiously in her notebook, trying to capture every word. Storytelling through food wasn't a new concept. She'd written articles about chefs who used meals to express emotions or memories. But this was on an entirely different level. These weren't just ingredients. They were symbols, messages waiting to be decoded. Jack leaned closer to examine a bowl filled with a swirling liquid that changed colors every few seconds. "What's this one?" he asked, pointing at it. The Vortha leader paused before responding, tilting its head as though considering how much to reveal. "That dish holds the essence of adaptation," it explained. "It reflects our ability to survive and thrive in challenging environments." Jack nodded thoughtfully, impressed by the explanation. To him, it sounded poetic, almost philosophical. He wondered how such ideas translated into flavor. As the humans began sampling the food, conversation started to flow more naturally. Jack tried a bite of something that resembled a jellyfish. It was salty yet sweet, with a texture that melted instantly in his mouth. He turned to Linda and whispered, "Not bad." She smirked, shaking her head. "You're unbelievable," she replied softly. "We're eating alien food, and all you can say is not bad." Despite the light-hearted banter, tension lingered beneath the surface. Not everyone at the table seemed comfortable. A few diplomats hesitated before taking bites, their faces tense as they chewed cautiously. Others pushed their plates away after a single taste, clearly put off by the unfamiliar flavors. Even Linda, who prided herself on being open-minded, found some of the dishes difficult to swallow. One bite left her mouth tingling strangely, as though her taste buds were confused. But Jack remained undeterred. He approached each dish with enthusiasm, treating the experience like a culinary adventure. At one point, he picked up a small glowing cube and held it up to the light, examining it curiously. "This looks like candy," he joked, popping it into his mouth. His eyes widened as the cube fizzed and popped against his tongue, releasing bursts of flavor that shifted rapidly from spicy to sour to sweet. "Okay, that's unexpected," he admitted, laughing nervously. Throughout the meal, the Vortha watched silently, their glowing eyes fixed intently on the humans. They didn't eat themselves, which struck Linda as odd. Were they observing reactions? Testing something? She wanted to ask but decided to wait for the right moment. For now, she focused on documenting everything: the sights, the smells, the textures, and hoped the answers would reveal themselves soon enough. As the feast continued, Jack found himself growing bolder. He gestured toward a dish filled with shimmering purple stew and asked, "What's the secret behind this one?" The Vortha leader hesitated briefly before replying, "It is designed to reveal truths." Jack raised an eyebrow, intrigued. Truths? About what? Before he could press further, Linda nudged him gently, silently urging caution. Whatever this meal was meant to do, they were about to find out. The humans followed the Vortha through winding corridors that seemed to stretch endlessly. The walls shimmered faintly, pulsing with a soft light that made it hard to tell where one section ended and another began. Jack Miller glanced around, his eyes wide with curiosity. He couldn't help but notice how quiet everything was. No hum of machinery, no footsteps echoing on the floor. It felt like they were walking through a dream. Linda Carter, ever the journalist, kept her notebook clutched tightly in her hand, jotting down quick observations whenever she could. She didn't want to miss a single detail. After what felt like an eternity, the group entered a large chamber. At first glance, it looked like a dining hall, though nothing about it resembled any room on Earth. The ceiling arched high above them, dotted with glowing orbs that cast a warm golden light. In the center of the room stood a long table made of some kind of translucent material that shimmered faintly when touched. Around it were chairs, or at least objects that vaguely resembled chairs. They had no backs or legs, just smooth, curved surfaces that hovered slightly above the ground. The Vortha leader gestured for the humans to sit. "We invite you to share a meal," it said in its calm, measured voice. The translation device, clipped to Linda's jacket, crackled softly as it relayed the words. Jack raised an eyebrow. A meal? This wasn't what he had expected. He'd imagined negotiations, maybe even debates, but not dinner. Still, he smiled politely and took a seat, figuring it was better to play along for now. Linda hesitated for a moment before following suit, her mind racing with questions. As the humans settled in, the Vortha moved around the room with practiced efficiency. They carried trays filled with dishes that looked both beautiful and bizarre. Some items glowed faintly, while others seemed to shift colors right before their eyes. The scents wafting from the food were unlike anything the humans had ever smelled: sweet, spicy, earthy, and metallic all at once. Jack leaned forward, intrigued despite himself. "This is incredible," he murmured under his breath. Linda shot him a look, silently reminding him to stay cautious. One of the aliens placed a dish in front of Jack, a bowl filled with something purple and gelatinous. It shimmered faintly, catching the light in a way that made it look almost alive. Jack stared at it, trying to decide whether to be fascinated or alarmed. Across the table, Linda noticed a few diplomats exchanging nervous glances. No one spoke. The silence was heavy, broken only by the faint rustling of the Vortha moving about the room. Finally, the alien leader spoke again. "This is a gesture of goodwill," it said. "Through sharing sustenance, we hope to foster understanding." Its tone was calm, but there was something about its words that felt deliberate, almost rehearsed. Linda scribbled furiously in her notebook, capturing every word. She wanted to ask why the Vortha had chosen this particular method to build trust, but she held her tongue, sensing it wasn't the right time. Jack, however, couldn't resist. "It smells amazing," he said, flashing a grin. "What's in it?" The Vortha leader tilted its head, clearly surprised by the question. For a moment, it didn't respond, as if unsure how to proceed. Then it replied, "It is a blend of elements unique to our world. You will find it revealing." Revealing. Jack frowned slightly, but nodded anyway. He glanced at Linda, who gave him a subtle shrug. Neither of them knew what to make of the comment, but they both understood one thing. Whatever was about to happen, it was going to be interesting. And as the Vortha began serving more dishes, filling the table with colors and textures that defied explanation, Jack found himself leaning forward with genuine excitement. If nothing else, this was shaping up to be the most unusual meal of his life. For now, all they could do was wait and see what the Vortha had planned next. The sun was setting over the quiet town of Willow Creek, Montana, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. It was an ordinary evening until a strange sound echoed through the air, a deep hum that seemed to vibrate in people's chests. Everyone stopped what they were doing and looked up. The source of the noise became clear almost instantly. A massive spacecraft, larger than anything anyone had ever seen, descended slowly from the heavens. Its surface shimmered like liquid metal, reflecting the fading sunlight in dazzling patterns. People gasped, pointed, and whispered nervously. Some ran inside their homes, while others stood frozen, staring at the colossal object hovering above the fields just outside town. Within minutes, news helicopters arrived, their blades chopping noisily through the air as reporters shouted questions nobody could answer. Military vehicles soon followed, lining the roads and setting up barricades to keep curious onlookers at bay. The world watched anxiously as scientists and government officials scrambled to figure out what the visitors wanted. After hours of tense waiting, the spacecraft finally made its move. A section of its smooth hull slid open, revealing a glowing doorway. From it emerged several tall, slender figures, the aliens. Their bodies were covered in glossy, iridescent scales that shifted colors with every step they took. Their eyes, large and unblinking, glowed faintly, giving them an eerie but not entirely threatening appearance. They moved gracefully, without hesitation, as if they had rehearsed this moment countless times. A representative stepped forward, holding a device that projected a voice in perfect English. "We are the Vortha," the alien announced, its tone calm and measured. "We come seeking understanding between our species." The crowd murmured in disbelief. No one expected the first words from an alien race to be so polite. Back in Washington, D.C., leaders debated how to respond. Should they send soldiers, scientists, or perhaps someone who could bridge the gap between humanity's diverse cultures? In the end, they decided on a mixed delegation. Experts from various fields, along with two ordinary citizens chosen for their unique perspectives. One was Jack Miller, a middle-aged chef known for his creativity in the kitchen and his knack for turning strangers into friends over a shared meal. The other was Linda Carter, a sharp-eyed journalist with a talent for asking the right questions. Jack wasn't sure why he'd been picked. Sure, he loved cooking, but he didn't think making lasagna qualified him to meet extraterrestrials. Still, when the call came, he couldn't say no. Linda, on the other hand, saw this as the story of a lifetime. She packed her notebook and camera, determined to document every detail. When the delegation arrived at the site, they were escorted aboard the alien ship via a beam of light that lifted them gently off the ground. Inside, the walls pulsed faintly, as though the entire structure were alive. Strange plants hung from the ceiling, emitting soft glows in hues of blue and green. The air smelled faintly sweet, like flowers after rain. Everyone felt a mix of awe and unease, unsure whether they were guests or captives. The Vortha greeted them warmly, gesturing for them to follow. As they walked deeper into the ship, Jack noticed something odd. The aliens seemed particularly interested in him. Whenever he spoke, even casually, they tilted their heads as if studying him. He smiled awkward keel.